7 bullets. That's how many times Gareth Mercer shot the woman he claimed to love. "My daughter's been shot! Please hurry! There's so much blood!" "Oh God, Audra! Stay with me, baby!" The bedroom floor of 42 Maple Street turned crimson that April afternoon, not from passion but from obsession. Audra Donovan never saw it coming. The quiet co-worker in electronics, the awkward glances, the way he memorized her schedule. "I know what music you listen to. I know you sleep on the left side of the bed. I know when you have nightmares. You look beautiful in that purple dress." These weren't the words of a man who had been invited into her life. They were the words of someone who had invaded it. The line between admirer and predator is razor thin. And when Audra Donovan finally rejected Gareth Mercer's advances, either you stay with me or you die. What turns unwanted attention into deadly obsession? What invisible triggers transform rejection into rage? And why didn't anyone see the warning signs before it was too late? One coffee date, one reluctant yes. 7 bullets. Welcome to True Crime Tales HQ, where we don't just tell stories, we expose the truth behind the headlines that shatter lives and communities. Before we dive into today's case, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Each subscription helps us continue bringing these important stories to light, and hitting the notification bell ensures you never miss an upload. If you find this story impactful, please share it. Your share could literally save someone's life. This is the story of Audra Donovan, and it begins not with the bullets that nearly ended her life, but with the moment she first caught his eye. The fluorescent lights of Walmart on Oakland Avenue in Dallas flooded the sales floor with their merciless glare as Audra Donovan ran items mechanically through her scanner. At 28, with a business management degree collecting dust, this wasn't the life she had imagined for herself. Yet here she was in the standard issue blue vest, her dark hair perfectly straightened, and her customer service smile practiced to perfection. "Do you need a bag?" she would ask without raising her eyes. Scan, bag, payment, smile. Next customer. The rhythm of retail had become second nature to her. When her line finally dried up, Audra would stretch her stiff shoulders and check her watch. Time moved differently under those harsh lights, slower, more painfully, but the paycheck helped cover bills while she searched for an opportunity to use her degree. Audra's friendship with Zoe Callahan from cosmetics was her workplace lifeline. During their shared lunch breaks, they'd sit in the cramped break room, comparing notes on particularly demanding customers or discussing plans for the future. "Jules is one of those people who has her whole life mapped out," Zoe would later tell investigators. "Everything organized, everything in its place. She had spreadsheets for her job applications, for crying out loud. She was just waiting for her real life to begin." Each evening, Audra would return to the modest house she shared with her mother, Evelyn. It wasn't ideal for a woman approaching 30 to live with her parent. But after her boyfriend Derek chose a job in another state over their relationship 8 months prior, Audra couldn't afford their apartment alone. The move back home felt like failure, but her mother never made her feel that way. "We'll get you back on your feet," Evelyn would assure her daughter. "This is just temporary." Audra believed that. She had to. Her nightly ritual involved updating her business plan for the small marketing consultancy she dreamed of starting. Meticulous notes filled her journals. Potential clients, service packages, pricing strategies. While other aspects of her life felt stalled, Audra clung to this vision of her future. What she couldn't see was that someone else was developing their own vision, one that featured her prominently, but without her consent. Every day at Walmart, Audra scanned thousands of items, checking for defects and damages, but she failed to notice the most dangerous defect of all, the increasingly obsessive gaze of the man who worked just 3 departments away. Gareth Mercer moved through the electronics department like a shadow, tall, thin, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that always seemed focused on something beyond the merchandise he was arranging. Transferred from the Fort Worth store when his mother fell ill with lung cancer, Gareth kept mostly to himself. Co-workers described him as quiet and polite, words that would later seem woefully inadequate to describe the storm brewing beneath his careful exterior. Security cameras throughout the store captured what no one seemed to notice in real time. How Gareth's gaze would find Audra across the sales floor, tracking her movements. How his lunch breaks mysteriously aligned with hers. How he would create reasons to walk past her register, pretending to reorganize nearby displays while stealing glances in her direction. Stalking behavior typically begins with what might appear to be coincidental encounters. Forensic psychologist Dr. Elaine Winters would later explain, the perpetrator creates opportunities for interaction that seem random but are actually carefully orchestrated. They're testing boundaries, gathering information, and building a fantasy relationship that exists only in their mind. For weeks, Gareth attempted to start conversations with Audra, approaches that always ended awkwardly. She was polite but kept her responses brief, sensing something off about these interactions without being able to name it. Then came the day when Zoe nudged Audra at her register, lowering her voice. "Hey, have you noticed the way Gareth looks at you?" she asked, nodding toward the electronics department, where Gareth was pretending to arrange merchandise, his eyes repeatedly finding their way back to Audra. "I've noticed," Audra admitted quietly, wiping down her register. "He's weird. He's always trying to start a conversation, but never able to keep it going." "I think he's in love with you," Zoe giggled. "Please don't," Audra grumbled. "I'm not into relationships right now, especially not with coworkers." But as Audra's shift was ending that evening, Gareth approached her register, nervously fingering the strap of his wristwatch. "Hi, Audra," he said, eyes darting up to meet hers before falling away. "Hi, Gareth," she replied, trying to sound polite but not too friendly. I wanted to ask," he stammered. "Would you like to have coffee with me tonight after work?" Audra froze. Saying no meant creating an awkward atmosphere with a coworker. Saying yes meant raising false hopes. The path of least resistance won out. "Okay, Gareth," she finally said, "but just coffee, okay? I've got things to do today." His face lit up with such joy that Audra felt a pang of guilt. He looked like he just won the lottery rather than secured a reluctant coffee date. At the Blue Moon Cafe across from the shopping center, Marissa Lopez was working the evening shift. She would later recall the discomfort she felt watching the interaction unfold. "The guy was so intense, you know." He barely blinked when he looked at her, and she kept trying to lean back, create some distance. "I've been a barista for 6 years. You get good at reading body language." She was uncomfortable, and he either didn't notice or didn't care. As they sat at a small table by the window, Gareth's revelations began to unnerve Audra. "I noticed you the first day you came to work in our store," he said eagerly, leaning forward. "Do you remember? It was February 11th of last year. You were wearing a green sweater under your uniform vest, and you kept tucking your hair behind your ear." Audra shifted uncomfortably. She couldn't remember the date or what she'd been wearing on her first day. That Gareth remembered such details was disturbing. "I know everything you like," he continued, as if sharing delightful secrets. "Your favorite color is teal. You always have turkey sandwich and grapes for lunch. On Thursdays, you allow yourself a brownie from the vending machine. You park on the north side of the parking lot because it's closer to the employee entrance. And you always check your phone before starting your car." Everything he said was true. Information she'd never shared with him. When Gareth mentioned her ex-boyfriend Michael by name, a relationship Audra had only discussed with Zoe, the chill that ran down her spine wasn't just discomfort, it was fear. What had started as uncomfortable attention was about to cross the line into something much more sinister, and the price of Audra's politeness was about to become dangerously high. What would you have done in Audra's position? Would you have recognized these warning signs or dismissed them as merely awkward behavior? If you're finding this story eye-opening, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more true crime investigations that could potentially save lives. Share this with someone who needs to understand the early signs of stalking behavior. And tell us in the comments about a time when your instincts warned you about someone. Were you right to be concerned? Now let's continue as the situation between Audra and Gareth takes a disturbing turn. The days following that coffee date brought no relief for Audra. If anything, Gareth's behavior grew more erratic, more obvious. Co-workers began to notice. He no longer tried to hide his fixation, standing motionless in aisles whenever Audra passed by, his gaze unblinking and intense. When their shifts aligned, he would appear wherever she was, in the break room, by her register, near the employee entrance, always watching. always finding reasons to be in her orbit. It was like he dropped any pretense of normal behavior, Zoe later told investigators. After she turned him down, it's like he didn't care who noticed anymore. We all saw it. We just didn't know what to do about it. Then came the text from numbers Audra didn't recognize. Did you sleep well last night? You seem restless. That book you're reading, I read the ending. You'll be disappointed. Why did you turn off your bedroom light at 11:43 p.m.? Are you feeling okay? Each message revealed an escalating invasion of her privacy. Each implied that she was being watched in her most personal moments. When Audra blocked one number, messages would come from another. The digital intrusion left her constantly on edge, checking over her shoulder, closing blinds, and questioning every parked car on her street. The situation reached a breaking point one Thursday afternoon. Audra was sharing her frustrations with Zoe, Tammy, and Desiree from the clothing department during their break. It's like I can't escape him, Audra confided, her voice low. Even at home, I feel like he's somehow there. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a box falling. They turned to see Gareth standing in the aisle, headphones scattered at his feet. His eyes were locked on Audra, a strange mixture of hurt and anger brewing in them. So, he said, his voice unnaturally flat, are you two officially dating yet? The question made no sense until he continued, revealing he knew about a conversation she'd had with another coworker that morning. It's none of your business, Gareth, Audra replied firmly, feeling her shoulders tense. Of course it's none of mine, he smiled crookedly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I just wondered what was so special about him. Why him and not me? As the women exchanged worried glances, Gareth's next words turned Audra's blood to ice. At work, you don't want to listen to me either. Maybe I should come to your house. 42 Maple Street. Audra had never told Gareth her address, never invited him to her home. The implications were clear. He had been following her, perhaps even watching her house. When she asked how he knew where she lived, he cut her short. Never mind, he said, rising with the box of headphones. Have fun on your date. I hope it's worth it. As Gareth walked away, Desiree exhaled sharply. Shit, this guy is really scary. Audra, you need to tell Marcus, Zoe insisted, referring to their supervisor. It's not just awkward attention anymore. He's watching you. He knows where you live. But like many stalking victims, Audra hesitated to escalate the situation, hoping it would somehow resolve itself. I'll think about it, she mumbled, hands shaking. Maybe after the weekend. The weekend brought a potential bright spot in the form of Reid Beckford from the sporting goods department. Tall, athletic, with short-cropped hair and kind eyes, Reid had always been friendly without overstepping boundaries. When he approached Audra and Zoe in the break room that Friday, his invitation came as a welcome surprise. Audra, I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, he said. Would you like to have dinner with me Saturday night? I have tickets to a jazz concert in Clyde Warren Park, and then we can eat at that new Creole restaurant. For the first time in weeks, Audra felt something other than dread. It sounds wonderful, she said sincerely. I'd love to go. As they exchanged contact information, the break room door opened again, and Gareth entered. He froze on the threshold, shifting his gaze between Audra and Reid, his face slowly contorting into a grimace. I apologize for the intrusion, he said coldly, before walking out and slamming the door. Former police detective and workplace security consultant Thaddeus Moreno has seen this pattern repeatedly, explains a computerized analysis of the security footage from that day. In stalking cases, a new romantic interest often becomes the catalyst for escalation. What the stalker perceives as competition can transform watchfulness into action, obsession into violence. The appearance of a romantic rival often serves as the triggering event. As Audra prepared for her Saturday date with Reid, spending almost 2 hours getting ready, she felt a mixture of excitement and lingering anxiety. The purple dress she chose made her feel confident again. Her mother, Evelyn, watched with a soft smile as Audra applied her makeup, pleased to see her daughter looking forward to something again. Neither woman could have known that while Audra was preparing for her evening, Gareth Mercer was making plans of his own. Plans that would turn what should have been a night of new beginnings into the beginning of the end. The evening began with such promise. Clyde Warren Park, built ingeniously over a former freeway, sprawled before them like an urban oasis in the heart of Dallas. The warm glow of twilight bathed everything in amber as Reid and Audra strolled through the manicured gardens, their conversation flowing naturally. "I've been watching you at the store for almost a year now," Reid admitted as they paused by a small lily pond. Audra tensed momentarily until he continued with a self-deprecating smile. "Not in a bad way, of course. It's just that you've always stood out. Your kindness to customers, your smile. I've tried several times to work up the courage to ask you out." "What changed?" Audra asked softly. Reid grinned. "Yesterday, Zoe came up to me and said, 'If you don't ask Audra out in the next 24 hours, I will personally tell her that you're too afraid to do it.'" They both laughed, and for the first time in weeks, Audra felt the tension that had been her constant companion begin to fade. Reid was easy to be with. No pressure, no strange comments or stares, just the natural rhythm of two people discovering each other. As dusk deepened, they made their way toward the center of the park, where an outdoor amphitheater had been set up. Musicians tuned their instruments as people settled into chairs arranged in a semicircle. "Wait here," Reid said after they found their seats. "I'll get us something to eat before the music starts." Alone for a moment, Audra watched the musicians prepare, feeling genuinely happy. Then her phone vibrated in her purse. A message from an unfamiliar number lit up the screen. "You look beautiful in that dress. Purple really is your color." Audra's head snapped up, eyes darting across the crowd. Families with children, elderly couples, groups of friends. Where was he? How did he know where she would be? The phone vibrated again. "Reid isn't right for you. He can't protect you the way I can." Her hands shaking, Audra stood up, scanning faces frantically. That's when Reid returned, carrying 2 paper cups and a bag of food. Seeing her distress, his smile vanished. "Audra, what happened?" She showed him the phone. "It's Gareth. He's here somewhere in the park. He's watching us." Reid's face darkened as he glanced at the messages. "Let's go to the car," he said immediately, setting aside the food and drinks. They moved quickly down the path toward the exit, Audra feeling exposed with every step. When they'd almost reached the parking lot, she saw him. Gareth was standing by the exit, leaning against a tree, hands in his pockets and a strange, almost dreamy smile on his face. "There he is," Audra whispered, squeezing Reid's hand. "At the exit." "Stay behind me," Reid said quietly. "We'll just walk past. If he tries anything, I'll handle it." As they approached, Gareth stepped away from the tree, blocking their path. "What a nice meeting," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Audra, won't you introduce me to your friend?" "Stand back, Gareth," Audra said firmly. "Please leave us alone." Reid stepped forward. "Look, buddy, we just want to pass quietly. Don't cause any trouble." "Trouble?" Gareth feigned surprise. "What trouble?" "I just want to talk to Audra. You don't mind, do you, Audra?" "I do mind," she replied, fighting the urge to run. "We're leaving." They tried to move around him, but Gareth shifted, blocking their way again. His voice dropped to a low growl as he locked eyes with Reid. "She's mine. You have no right to touch her." "Dude, are you crazy?" Reid frowned. "Audra is not someone's property, and she's made it clear she doesn't want to hang out with you." Gareth stepped closer, his eyes darkening. "You don't know anything about her. I've been watching her for months. I know what coffee she drinks, what music she listens to, what books she reads. I know she sleeps on the right side of the bed and that she brushes her teeth after she washes her face. I know she has nightmares on Sundays and that she cries when she thinks no one can see." A chill ran down Audra's spine. Every detail was accurate. "Were you following me?" she whispered. "Were you at my house?" Gareth smiled, and that smile was perhaps the most frightening thing Audra had ever seen. "I'm always around, Audra, always looking out for you." Reid stepped forward resolutely. "It stops now. You don't go near Audra anymore. You don't call her. You don't write her messages. If I find out you're stalking her again, I will personally go to the police." Something changed in Gareth's eyes. Something wild, animalistic. "You think you can just take her?" He gritted through clenched teeth. "You think you're worthy of her?" Before Audra could intervene, Gareth lunged at Reid with unexpected speed, landing a punch to his face. Reid staggered but held his ground, instinctively defending himself. A struggle ensued. Gareth striking with the fury of a man who had lost all reason, Reid trying to defend himself and push his attacker away. People began to gather around them, some shouting for them to stop, others pulling out phones to record the altercation. "She's mine," Gareth shouted, throwing punch after punch. "You'll never have her." Finally, two men from the crowd rushed in to break up the fight, dragging Gareth away as he continued to lash out and scream. "Audra, tell him you belong to me." Reid was breathing heavily, wiping blood from his split lip. His jacket was torn, and a bruise was already forming on his cheekbone. Someone in the crowd announced they'd called the police. "No," Audra said suddenly, approaching Reid. "Let's just leave, please." In the car, Audra finally broke down, the tension, fear, and shock of the past weeks overwhelming her. Reid silently handed her tissues and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she said through tears. "I didn't think it would turn out like this." "It's not your fault," Reid said softly, "but you need to go to the police. What he's doing is harassment, Audra. It's serious." "I know," she nodded, wiping away tears. "I'll talk to Marcus on Monday." "It's not just about work," Reid insisted. "What he said about knowing how you sleep, about your nightmares. Audra, he might have been watching you in your home." Dr. Anita Sharma, specialist in criminal psychology, has studied hundreds of cases like Audra's. The narrator continues over footage of the park at night. "What we see in this confrontation is textbook escalation. The stalker initially believes they have a special connection with their target. When reality contradicts this fantasy, especially through the introduction of a romantic rival, their possessive instincts can turn violent. The phrase "she's mine" reveals the fundamental distortion in their thinking. They genuinely believe they have a claim on this person. After that night in the park, Audra knew she had to take action. She made plans to speak with her supervisor first thing Monday morning, but as she settled into an uneasy sleep Sunday night, she had no idea how little time she had left. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a sense of purpose. Audra parked her car at Walmart earlier than usual, determination set in her jaw. The weekend's events had crystallized what she'd been trying to deny. This wasn't going to go away on its own. As she walked through the employee entrance, she mentally rehearsed what she would tell Marcus. She needed to be clear, factual, and firm. But before she could reach the supervisor's office, she spotted Gareth arranging merchandise in the electronics department, acting as if nothing had happened. When he saw her, he smiled politely. The normalcy after Saturday's violence was so jarring that Audra decided to confront him directly before going to management. "We need to talk," she said quietly, approaching him. "Alone." "Of course, Audra," Gareth answered, his eyes lighting up as if she'd suggested a date. "When?" "Now," she replied firmly. "In the back." He followed her obediently to a small stockroom filled with boxes of merchandise. Audra left the door ajar. She wasn't taking any chances being in a completely enclosed space with him. "Gareth," she began, taking a deep breath to steady her voice. "What happened on Saturday is unacceptable. Your behavior scares me." "I was just defending you," he replied with genuine surprise. "Reid isn't right for you, Audra. He doesn't understand you the way I do." "You weren't protecting me. You were attacking my friend," Audra said, struggling to keep her voice even. "And it's not just that. You've been following me. You know things about me that you couldn't possibly know through normal means. Have you been to my house?" Gareth smiled with a tenderness that, in context, was deeply frightening. "I just want to take care of you. Make sure you're okay." "It's called stalking, Gareth," Audra said sharply, "and it's against the law. I'm here to tell you it stops now. You stay away from me and my boyfriend. If I spot you near my house, if you try to contact me outside of work again, I'm going to Marcus, and you will be fired." Something shifted in Gareth's expression, a mixture of hurt, confusion, and something darker, more dangerous. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "I love you, Audra. I've loved you from the first moment I saw you. Every day I wake up thinking of you and fall asleep picturing your face. You're the air I breathe." "That's not love, Gareth," Audra shook her head. "It's an obsession, and it scares me." "I'd do anything for you," he continued as if he hadn't heard her. "I'll give you anything you want. I'll protect you until my last breath. Why can't you see that? Why do you reject me for this?" Reid questioned Mark. Because I don't feel that way about you, Audra answered honestly. And I never will. What you're doing is wrong. It has to stop. Gareth's eyes suddenly darkened. I can't stop, he said, his voice barely audible. I can't stop loving you. I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop dreaming about us. It's stronger than I am. Audra felt a chill run down her spine. There was something fanatical in his words, in his gaze. Then I have no choice, she said, taking a step toward the door. I'm going to Marcus. Gareth's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist so tightly that Audra cried out in pain. No! His eyes turned almost black. You're not going to him. You're staying with me. Gareth, you're hurting me, she gasped, trying to pull free as his fingers dug deeper into her flesh. Audra, please. His voice was pleading, even as his grip tightened. Give me a chance. One real chance. You'll see how good we'll be together. Let me go, and we can talk calmly, she offered, trying to reach whatever rationality remained in his mind. His grip loosened momentarily, and Audra seized the opportunity, wrenching her arm free. She took a step back, rubbing her wrist, which was already beginning to bruise into the distinct pattern of fingertips. That's it, Gareth, she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. I'm going to Marcus. You've crossed the line. She turned and walked quickly from the stockroom, not looking back. Her heart pounded frantically as she made her way to Marcus Holloway's office and closed the door behind her. Marcus, a reserved man with a neat short beard and attentive eyes, listened silently to Audra's story, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His face remained impassive, but his eyes showed growing concern. And you say he knew personal details about your life? Things he could only learn by watching you at home? Yes, she nodded, showing him her bruised wrist. He knew how I sleep when I have nightmares. I don't feel safe. Marcus sighed and rubbed his chin. Audra, what you're describing is serious. It's not just inappropriate behavior in the workplace. It's harassment and possibly other violations of the law. He picked up his phone and dialed an extension. Cheryl, please locate Gareth Mercer and ask him to report to my office immediately. After a brief pause, he added, Yes, immediately, and call security. As they waited for Gareth to appear, Marcus offered Audra a cup of water, which she accepted gratefully. Minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness, until finally there was a knock on the door. Cheryl, the staff administrator, entered with a troubled expression. We can't find Gareth Mercer. He's not in the department, and no one has seen him since his shift started. Was he sure he came to work today? Marcus frowned. Yes, he checked in at the entrance at 8 o'clock this morning, Cheryl confirmed, but he's nowhere to be found. Audra felt fear returning. He was in the back with me about half an hour ago, she said, her voice dropping as she realized the implications of his disappearance. Cheryl, make sure he hasn't left the building, Marcus said quickly, and have security review the camera footage. We need to know where he is. 10 minutes later, Cheryl returned with disturbing news. He left the building through the service exit 40 minutes ago. The cameras recorded him walking briskly to the parking lot, getting into his car, and driving away. Marcus turned to Audra with concern. You said you're living with your mother? Yes, she nodded, the panic rising again. Call her right now, he advised. Make sure she's all right. Audra reached for her phone with shaking hands and dialed her mother's number. The dial tone came one after another, but there was no answer. She tried again with the same result. She's not answering, Audra whispered, her heart skipping a beat. She should be home. It's her day off. Cheryl, call the police, Marcus ordered immediately. Tell them we have a possible stalking situation and that the suspect may be a threat. He turned back to Audra. Maybe it's okay. Maybe your mother just can't hear the phone or went out to the store, but it's best not to take any chances. You can go home right now if you want. I'll send someone from security with you. The drive home was the longest of Audra's life. Even though the Walmart security guard escorting her drove well above the speed limit, she kept dialing her mother's number with increasing desperation. When they finally turned onto Maple Street, Audra was momentarily relieved to see her mother's car in the driveway. She was home. But that relief instantly transformed into a wave of dread as she recognized the other vehicle parked behind it. The old dark blue Honda she'd seen in the Walmart parking lot when Gareth came to work. That's his car, she told the security guard, feeling her stomach drop. He's here. As Audra pulled into her driveway and saw Gareth's car, she knew her worst fears were about to be realized. Stay in the car, the security guard ordered, pulling out his walkie-talkie. I'm calling for backup. But Audra couldn't wait. Her mother was inside, possibly in danger. She leapt from the car before the guard could stop her and rushed toward the house, heart hammering against her ribs. The front door stood slightly ajar, another ominous sign. Audra burst inside, her voice breaking as she called out, "Mom! Mom, are you here?" An eerie silence answered her. She moved through the living room, into the kitchen, then peered into the dining room. Each empty space amplified her fear. The security guard followed cautiously, checking each room as they passed. "The police are on their way," he whispered. "We should wait outside." "No," Audra shook her head stubbornly. "My mother is here somewhere." As she approached the stairs to the second floor, she heard voices. Her mother's quiet, pleading tone, and Gareth's lower, tense responses. They were coming from her bedroom. The guard tried to hold her back, but Audra was already taking the steps two at a time, driven by fear for her mother. She pushed open her bedroom door and froze at the horrifying tableau before her. Evelyn sat rigidly on the edge of the bed, her face drained of color, terror evident in her wide eyes. Across from her by the window stood Gareth, and in his hand was a gun, pointed at the floor but ready to be raised at any moment. "Audra," he said with a smile, as if welcoming an expected guest. "You came home early. I wanted to prepare a surprise for you." "Gareth," she said carefully, taking a slow step into the room. "What are you doing? Why did you come here?" "I came to get you," he answered simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "We should be together, Audra. I've prepared everything. We'll go far away from here. Start a new life. Just you and me." "Audra, go away," Evelyn said quietly, but Gareth raised his gun sharply, pointing it at her. "Shut up," he shouted. "Stay out of this. She has to make her own choice." "It's okay, Mom," Audra said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Gareth, let's talk. Just you and me. Just put the gun down, please." The Walmart security guard had retreated into the hallway, presumably calling for backup. Audra prayed they wouldn't burst in with sirens and provoke Gareth into doing something irreparable. "What should we talk about?" Gareth asked, relaxing slightly, but not lowering the weapon. "You've already said everything. You went to Marcus to get me fired. You chose Reid over me. You rejected my love." "I was scared," Audra said, taking another cautious step into the room. "You scared me, Gareth. The way you watched me, the way you approached this, that's not how it's done." "How is it done?" he asked bitterly. "I was paying attention. I cared. I studied everything you like to make you happy. Isn't that love?" "Love is built on reciprocity and respect," Audra said softly as she continued to approach slowly. "Not on fear and coercion." She could see emotions warring on Gareth's face. Part of him seemed to grasp the truth in her words, but the darker, obsessive part wouldn't yield. "I'm giving you one last chance, Audra," he finally said, his voice suddenly clear and cold. "The choice is simple. Either you stay with me, or you die." "No!" Evelyn exclaimed, jumping up from the bed. "Sit down!" Gareth shouted, pointing the gun at her. Audra took the moment to take another step forward. "Gareth," she said quietly, drawing his attention back to herself, "I can't be with you. Not like this. Not under threat. I could never love a man who threatens me and my family." Something changed in his eyes. Hope replaced by cold determination. "Then you've made your choice," he said, raising the gun and pointing it directly at Audra. "Gareth, please," she whispered, frozen in place. "Don't do this." "I love you, Audra," he said with frightening calm. "So much that I can't let you be with anyone else." The first shot sounded deafening in the small room. Audra felt a sharp pain in her shoulder and jerked backward. A second shot followed. A third. A fourth. She fell to the floor, feeling each bullet pierce through her body. A fifth. Sixth. Seventh. Evelyn's screams came as if through cotton. Audra saw her mother rush toward her, covering her with her body, begging Gareth to stop. But it was too late. Audra felt life ebbing away, the pain becoming distant and the sounds muffled. Through dimming vision, she saw her mother's face contorted with horror above her, heard police sirens in the distance. saw Gareth frozen with the gun in his hand, staring at what he had done. A sudden realization seemed to cross his features. He looked at the gun, then at the bleeding Audra, his face contorting with horror. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no, Audra!" The gun fell from his weakened hand, clattering loudly on the floor. "I didn't mean to," his voice shook. "I just wanted you to love me." From downstairs came the shouts of police officers entering the house. Gareth looked at the door, then at the window, and made his decision. He rushed to the window, swung it open, and jumped out without looking back. As darkness closed around Audra, her mother's voice begged her to hold on, promised that help was near. But Audra knew that help might be too late. Too many shots. Too much blood. Gareth ran. He scrambled through backyards, climbed over fences, squeezed through hedges. His hands were covered in blood, Audra's blood, and the thought made him run faster, as if he could somehow escape what he'd done. In that bedroom, in mere seconds, multiple lives were forever changed by obsession turned to violence. A promising young woman fighting for her life, a mother facing unimaginable horror, and a man who crossed the line from love to possession to destruction, leaving devastation in his wake. The bedroom transformed into a battlefield as paramedics fought to save Audra's life. Blood soaked through the carpet as the medical team worked with practiced urgency, establishing IV lines, applying pressure dressings, monitoring vital signs that grew weaker by the minute. "She's tachycardic and hypotensive," one paramedic called out. "We need to move her now." As they loaded Audra onto a stretcher, her mother Evelyn clutched her daughter's limp hand, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she begged the paramedics, "please save my little girl." Outside, the peaceful Dallas neighborhood had erupted into chaos. Police cruisers blocked off streets while officers with flashlights and K-9 units combed through yards, alleyways, and wooded areas. Residents peered anxiously through windows or stood on porches, watching as the manhunt unfolded. "The suspect is armed and dangerous," crackled the police radio. "Last seen heading west through the Thompson property. All units converge." 2 blocks away, Gareth crouched behind a garden shed, breathing heavily. The reality of what he'd done was crashing over him in waves. His clothes were stained with Audra's blood. His hands trembled uncontrollably. The fantasy world he'd constructed, where Audra would eventually love him, where they'd build a life together, had shattered completely. The beam of a flashlight swept across the yard, then another. Gareth pressed himself against the shed, but the sound of panting drew closer. A police dog had caught his scent. "Gareth Mercer," a voice called through a megaphone. "You are surrounded. Come out with your hands up." When Gareth finally emerged, he was a shell of the man who had stormed into Audra's home hours earlier. He walked forward with vacant eyes, hands raised, surrendering without resistance as officers tackled him to the ground. At Dallas Memorial Hospital, a team of trauma surgeons worked frantically to repair the damage from 7 bullets that had torn through Audra's body. Her mother paced the waiting room, alternating between desperate prayers and calls to family members. 6 hours later, the lead surgeon approached Evelyn, his surgical cap removed, his expression grave. "Mrs. Donovan," he said softly, "we did everything we could. The damage was too extensive. 3 bullets pierced vital organs. The blood loss was catastrophic. I'm so sorry, but Audra didn't make it." Evelyn collapsed into a nearby chair, a primal wail escaping her throat. The sound echoed through the sterile hospital corridors, the unmistakable cry of a mother who had lost her child. The following morning, the Dallas County Courthouse was packed as Gareth Mercer made his first appearance before a judge. He shuffled into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, hands and feet shackled, his gaze hollow and distant. "Gareth Mercer, you are charged with first-degree murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, stalking, breaking and entering, and false imprisonment," the judge intoned, the charge upgraded with Audra's death. "How do you plead?" "Not guilty," his court-appointed attorney answered as Gareth remained silent, his expression vacant. "Given the extreme violence of these crimes and the defendant's clear flight risk, bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody until trial." At Walmart, the news spread quickly. Employees gathered in shocked groups, struggling to comprehend that someone they had worked alongside daily had committed such a heinous act. The break room where Audra and Gareth had once shared space became a memorial. Photos, cards, flowers, and messages of grief. Marcus Holloway, the supervisor who had tried to intervene that fateful Monday, addressed the staff with a trembling voice. "We've lost one of our own in the most tragic way imaginable," he said. "Let this be a harsh reminder that we must take every sign of harassment seriously. Audra's death cannot be in vain." Zoe Callahan couldn't stop replaying their conversations. "I keep thinking about all the times she mentioned he was making her uncomfortable," she told reporters through tears. "We all saw it happening, but somehow it seemed like awkward behavior, not something that would end like this. I should have pushed harder for her to report him sooner." 6 months later, Gareth Mercer's trial began. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the stalking pattern, witness testimonies, security footage, and the brutal final act. Under Texas law, first-degree murder with premeditation carries the possibility of capital punishment, but the district attorney pursued life imprisonment instead. Reid Beckford testified about the confrontation in the park, his voice breaking as he recalled his last conversation with Audra. "She was afraid, but she was also determined to handle it the right way. She didn't deserve this. No one does." When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Gareth Mercer was found guilty on all counts. At the sentencing hearing, the judge addressed him directly. "Mr. Mercer, your actions reveal a disturbing inability to distinguish between love and possession. You claim to love Audra Donovan, yet you systematically terrorized her and ultimately took her life when she exercised her right to choose who to love. This court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." Under Texas Penal Code Section 12.31, a life sentence for capital murder means Gareth would never walk free again. As he was led away in handcuffs, Evelyn Donovan watched from the gallery, her face a mask of grief and exhaustion. 1 year after Audra's death, her mother established the Audra Donovan Foundation, dedicated to raising awareness about stalking and providing resources for victims. The Walmart where both Audra and Gareth had worked instituted mandatory training on recognizing and reporting concerning behavior. "If sharing Audra's story saves even one life," Evelyn told a group gathered at a foundation event, "then something meaningful will have come from our tragedy. My daughter deserved to live her dreams. Instead, her death has become a lesson we cannot afford to ignore." Audra Donovan's story is not unique. Each year in the United States, 1.4 million people are victims of stalking. 1 in 6 women will experience stalking in their lifetime, and tragically, 76% of women murdered by intimate partners were stalked first. The warning signs were there: Gareth's excessive attention, his knowledge of personal details, his anger when rejected, his monitoring of Audra's movements. But like many victims, Audra didn't immediately recognize the danger. Like many workplaces, her employer lacked clear protocols for addressing concerning behavior. "Stalking is a pattern crime," explains forensic psychologist Dr. Eleanor Winters. "It's rarely a single incident that raises alarm. Rather, it's the accumulation of behaviors that, when viewed together, reveal the danger." For those experiencing unwanted attention, experts recommend documenting every interaction, being direct in setting boundaries, informing friends and family, varying daily routines, and reporting concerns to authorities, even when it feels like an overreaction. Evelyn Donovan now spends her days speaking at workplaces, schools, and community centers. "My daughter thought she was being kind by agreeing to that coffee date," she tells audiences. "She didn't want to create workplace tension. That politeness cost her life." The Audra Donovan Foundation has helped implement stalking awareness protocols in workplaces across Texas, including mandatory training for managers and clear reporting channels for employees. "No job is worth your safety," Evelyn emphasizes. "No workplace harmony is worth your life." What happened to Audra could happen to anyone who misses the warning signs. It could happen to someone you know, a friend, a sister, a daughter, but it doesn't have to. If Audra's story has impacted you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Your simple act could save a life. Leave a comment sharing any warning signs you've recognized in your own experiences. Your insight could help others identify concerning behavior before it escalates. For anyone who needs immediate help, The National Stalking Resource Center hotline is available 24/7 at 1-879-7333. You're not overreacting. You're not alone. And your concerns deserve to be taken seriously.